Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna. Just a sec. Oops. There's always something. So as usual, there is something. Okay, that's better. All right. So, devotees, let us begin. Let me read verse 4. We are on to verse 4 now. Another famous and very inspiring verse. Dadati pratigrinati guyam akyati prichati bhunkte bojayate chaiva shadvidham priti lakshanam. Offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad and offering prasad. These are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. Aha. Very nice. So, Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, in this verse, Srila Rupa Goswami explains how to perform devotional activities in the association of other devotees. So now, let me just mention that in this verse, the structure of the purport is different from the structure of the other 3, all the other 3 purports that we've read. All the other 3 purports, all the other 3 verses, they were presenting lists. Vacha vegam, manasa krodha vegam, and so on and so forth. Utsaha, nischaya, dardiyat. They're lists of different important things. And in the purports, Srila Prabhupada, first of all, he would give a little introduction to the general subject of the whole of the verse, but then he would go step by step, point by point, through the different, whatever number of particular points there were. Generally there were 6 actually. So first of all, Vacha Vegam, then Manasa Vegam, Krodha Vegam. But now here, Srila Prabhupada is dealing with it somewhat differently, in that he just discusses here and there different points from the verse, and then goes on into some other point from the verse. Then he returns back to one of the other points, and then he goes to another point, and then back to some other points. So it's like that. Therefore, what I've done is I've divided the commentary the purport, I've just divided it up by paragraphs. What he focuses on each paragraph. There's something like 9 paragraphs, something like that. So we just go paragraph 1, this is discussed. Paragraph 2, this is discussed. That's the idea. And in terms of the actual subject matters, there are 6 here. Again, as usual, so far every verse has had 6 particular points. So these 6, they're just discussed and then moved on to another one, and then back to the first one, and on to another one, and back to the second one. Anyway, you get the idea. Okay, so, but the basic idea, as we mentioned, as Prabhupada said, is that in this verse, Rupa Goswami, the author, is explaining how to perform devotional activities in the company, in the association of other devotees. So, first thing he discusses is how, he just, in the first purport, he just lists out the six exchanges. First of all, there's giving charity, then accepting it, then revealing your mind, explaining how you feel about something to a suitable devotee, and then if you are the suitable devotee and someone is revealing their mind to you, then you listen and you respond like that. So it's a two-way conversation. Someone is revealing their thoughts, the other one is responding and maybe making suggestions and so on. And then accepting prasad and offering prasad. Anyway, those are the 6, obviously, in the verse itself. And Prabhupada, well, let me just give you a little challenge. I want you all to consider how have you been doing these 6 things recently? You think about it. Have you given charity to a devotee? Did you accept some charity? Did you give some prasadam? Did you accept prasadam? Did you speak confidentially? You think about it. And I would like you to do, before we meet tomorrow, in about 24 hours, I want you all, please, to do at least one of these things, or more. Let's make it practical. Just try to do at least one, and see how it goes. Yeah, why don't you do that? So anyway, then Prabhupada immediately gets into the subject matter. Like we said, he doesn't give a general introduction, as he did do with the other verses. He did do, it was quite clear that he was doing that. Prabhupada gets straight into it by at least mentioning about the third and the fourth activities, exchanges, revealing one's mind and responding when someone reveals their mind to you. Prabhupada says, an experienced devotee explains, and an inexperienced devotee learns, which includes questioning and so the experienced devotee is responding, or is giving knowledge, giving understanding. So this is an example of Guhyam Akyati Pritchati. Prabhupada's just immediately getting into it like that. And then Prabhupada makes an interesting little point that when a devotee is distributing prasadam, that we, in order to maintain our devotional mood, Prabhupada says, we must accept the prasadam as the Lord's grace. Yeah. In other words, we shouldn't be too choosy about it. If a devotee is kind enough to offer you some prasad, you should accept it. But you should accept it as the mercy of the Lord and the devotee, and not just like, oh, eating. Here we go, eating again. Do I want to eat this? Is it my style of eating? But we want to maintain a devotional spirit. So we should accept, but then we should accept it in a certain way, as being the mercy of the Lord. And Prabhupada makes a point, which he repeats further on, that we should invite devotees to our home and distribute prasadam to them. And Prabhupada says, be ready to please them. Or you could say, have a program, have some kirtan, have some Krishna Katha, and maybe give some gifts to the devotees. Be ready to please them. This is bhunte bhojayate chaiva. Yeah. You know, particularly for householders, it's very important. Let me just tell you a little story, which I know some, or however many of you may have heard. Many years ago, when I was in England and Prabhupada was still on the planet, one devotee came from South America, somewhere in South America, and he had just become a grihastha in the last couple of months or something. And he told us that when he got married, Prabhupada like maybe arrived the next day in that city. So just at the time that he got married. And then Prabhupada, of course, every day would go on morning walks. And this devotee was one of the senior devotees, so he would go on the morning walk also. So first morning walk, he thought, let me ask Prabhupada a very profound question about being a Krishna conscious grihastha, because he'd just become a Krishna conscious grihastha. So he asked Prabhupada on the walk. He said, Prabhupada, what are the duties of a grihastha in Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada responded, be generous, don't be miserly, and walked on. So the devotee had been expecting or hoping for something more sort of subtle and a bit more extensive, but that was what he got. And he thought, well, maybe Prabhupada, he's got something on his mind. So about 2 weeks later, Prabhupada was in some other place, but he was there also, that devotee was there also, and he went on the morning walk with Prabhupada, and again he thought, aha, it's my opportunity. Let me ask Prabhupada, a profound question to get some insight into how I should live now as a grihastha. So again he asked Prabhupada exactly the same question. Srila Prabhupada, what are the duties of a grihastha in Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada answered, be generous, don't be miserly. Exactly the same answer. So it's very important for grihasthas actually. And therefore it's very nice. It's very nice that Prabhupada here, right at the beginning of the purport, is encouraging the grihasthas, invite the devotees to your home. Invite them. Serve them prasadam. Look after them nicely. Because this is bhunkte bhojayate chaiva, and this is an exchange of love. And ultimately Krishna consciousness is all about love. Yeah. Okay, so let's see, what now? All right, so we go on to the second paragraph. So Prabhupada makes the point in the second paragraph that having these exchanges, like inviting someone and looking after them nicely, having exchanges like this, this is common even in just ordinary materialistic life. And Prabhupada gives the example of a businessman. A businessman wants to make a business deal with another businessman. So, at least in many cases, he doesn't just go and visit him and say, hey, let's make a deal. You know, give me your best price on this. But the businessman, in many cases, he will invite the other business person to lunch and see that the person has a nice lunch and look after them and, you know, some nice conversation and so on. And then he'll introduce the idea of the business deal. So it's common just in life in general as a principle. It's not simply for devotees, but it's a very nice principle for developing relationship. Developing relationship. And in Krishna consciousness, relationship is very important. Yeah, so, let's see. So then Prabhupada goes on to make the point that actually all these 6 activities, they happen regularly when there are exchanges of love. These are like standard expressions of love shared between people. But here, of course, we're talking about devotees. So like I mentioned just a little earlier, we want you, between now and tomorrow afternoon, evening, we want you to do one of these things. And not just tomorrow, that you just do it one time and then it's done. But we want you to think how you can really introduce these things into your regular life. Giving gifts regularly. And accepting gifts if they're offered. And so on. These 6 activities. So, let's see. Let us see. So Srila Prabhupada goes on in the purport to explain that the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been established to facilitate these 6 kinds of loving exchanges. There are different ways of looking at ISKCON. What is ISKCON? What are we trying to do? What are we about? But one of the ways of looking at ISKCON what it is, who we are, is in terms of it's an environment. It's an environment for us to cultivate and develop our loving exchanges, and to cultivate and develop our abilities in improving how we engage in loving activities. Yeah. So that's really nice. That's really wonderful. Aha. And Prabhupada says that because we are doing these things, therefore the movement is expanding. That's interesting. The expansion of these 6 activities, their presence and their influence, the effects they have on us and on the atmosphere of the movement and the activities of the movement, these 6 activities are just all pervasive, and on the basis of them, the movement's expanding. That's one way of looking at how the movement is expanding. And then Srila Prabhupada gives some examples. First of all, Prabhupada says the movement was begun single-handedly. He himself was doing these things. You know, if you've read the Leelamrita, I imagine you have, I certainly hope you have, but you'll see right in the very beginning, Srila Prabhupada was cooking for the young people who were dropping in for lunch. He was cooking for them. He was serving the prasadam to them. He was speaking to them, giving them advice and preaching, and like this. Right in the very first stages, these 6 activities in different ways were prominent components in Prabhupada's program for developing the Krishna consciousness movement. So anyway, Prabhupada goes on to point out how we are doing these things in different ways. Means now. These are regular activities. Prabhupada gives a few examples that people give donations. We give them books or different things. Books, of course, are very important. Or we give people books. They give donations. Yeah, when you're out there on the street or going door to door, distributing the books and dealing with the people and the situations and everything, you might not normally think we're in the process of doing loving exchanges. It's more like, hey, we got to distribute as many books as possible a lot of the time. But here's an idea. If you're doing book distribution, try and look at it like that. It is a loving exchange. You are giving a gift, the gift of knowledge, and then trying to encourage the person to reciprocate by giving a gift back, by making a donation. And then Prabhupada says also, we hold festivals. We hold festivals and invite people, our members and friends, and then we give them prasadam. We give them prasadam, we give them knowledge, we inquire, how are you doing? And we listen to what they have to say about how they're doing and try and give some encouragement like that. And people inquire. what is Krishna consciousness? What's it all about? And we give answers. So like this, Prabhupada is giving a sort of an overview of what is Krishna consciousness and what is the Krishna consciousness movement in terms of these 6 loving exchanges. And Prabhupada says, as a result, it's in the same second paragraph, as a result, in this way our society is successfully spreading all over the world, and the intelligentsia of all countries is gradually appreciating our Krishna conscious activities. You know, I just read a story, a book distribution story, I don't know, maybe a week ago, something like that. I'd never seen it before. It was from many years ago in Prabhupada's, or in or around, I think in Prabhupada's time, at least right around that time. Some devotees from America, they traveled to Canada to distribute books. And even though it's a separate country, but at least in those days, you could just take stuff in there and sell it. You know, there was like, it was very open as far as importing things. So the devotees just took books in, distributed books, and then they came back. They still had some books. So they stopped at the border, and they're coming from Canada, so now they're speaking to the American man, official. And the American man says, okay, let me have a look in the back of your vehicle. So they open it up, and he takes out a book. And he says, oh, you got so much nectar in here. I think we'll have to confiscate it. And the devotees were shocked. What's going on? It's nectar, but he wants to confiscate it. And then the fellow said, actually, you know, I've been visiting your temple somewhere in America, and I've got some of the books, and they're really nice. So just carry on with the good work. Yes, so it's like, and Prabhupada makes the point that the life of this movement, the blissfulness, the joy, and the spiritual potency which is there in this movement is coming from doing these 6 things in one way or another, maybe some variations, and maybe directly or indirectly, even combinations. But these 6 exchanges are just enriching and giving vitality to the Krishna consciousness movement and making it special, making it very special. And I think we all know it's very special. So, let's say, so therefore, Prabhupada says, therefore people, they need to be given the chance to associate with the devotees. Because if they simply become involved in these 6 exchanges, or some of them, or one of them, or 2, if they simply become involved in these exchanges or reciprocating with the exchanges, then even, Prabhupada says, even an ordinary person can fully revive his dormant Krishna consciousness. Fully revive. Now, this is very important. So, Now, what Prabhupada does, he then talks about how that works. If you follow what I mean, that we've said that if people start associating with the devotees, and in that way they start becoming involved in these exchanges, then they're going to revive their Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada now quotes, a couple of verses at least, in which he describes sort of step by step a little bit how it happens. So first of all, the first point is that Krishna consciousness is just there already in the heart of every living entity. It's already there. And he quotes very famous verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's spoken by Lord Chaitanya to Srila Sanatana Goswami about that nature of the living entity. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Karaye Udoy. That pure love for Krishna is eternally present in the heart of every living entity. It is not something to be gained from an external source. But when one engages in the process of devotional service, Shravan Adi, beginning with hearing, then that dormant Krishna conscious nature gradually arises in the heart. I've sort of given a slightly different version of the translation to what Prabhupada gives here, but it's a version which is there elsewhere. Yeah. So, first of all, we have to understand that the potential for people to become Krishna conscious is the fact that it's already there in their heart. Therefore, they can become Krishna conscious. It's not like something foreign to them, which somehow or other they have to take into themselves and adjust themselves and change themselves. It's just a matter of bringing out what's already there. And elsewhere, actually in Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada gives the example of a child learning how to walk. We're all adults, we can all work and walk. We can all walk unless we have some physical disability or something like that. It's just part of human nature. Everybody walks. Just like everyone has 2 eyes, 2 ears, but 1 mouth. That's the same for everyone. So everyone walks. At least as children, as they become slightly older, they start walking. So the potential for that is the fact that walking is an integral part of human nature. That's what it is. It's not like some foreign thing that somehow or other you got to strain your brain and come to grips with it. And sometimes, when we're talking about this, sometimes we give the example, Prabhupada gives the example of walking. Sometimes we give the example of flying. And I don't mean in aeroplanes, but flying, flying ourselves in the air. Flying ourselves is not part of the human condition. And therefore to learn it, you can't learn it. You can't learn it. It's just not part of what we are, but walking is, and therefore we can walk. So Krishna consciousness is also part of what we are, and therefore we can become Krishna conscious. Not just because it makes sense, not just because the people, the devotees are nice, although it does make sense and the devotees are nice, but not just because of that, but because it's natural to us. Therefore we can become Krishna conscious. So then the next step, next step you could say, after having recognized that, right, it's part of our nature, what comes next? So Prabhupada says, on the basis of that verse, Shravan Adi Shuddhachite, if one engages in the process of devotional service, beginning with Shravanam, hearing, then the Krishna consciousness starts rising in the heart. So therefore, it's very important for us to hear and chant, but it's a very important part of the process of getting others involved in Krishna consciousness, for them to hear us chant, and for them to learn how to chant, and to learn how to hear like this. So as they do, Prabhupada then continues on, there's a sequence here. Prabhupada continues on. So now, okay, that new person, because Krishna consciousness is there within their heart, they had some association, and now they're chanting, hearing and chanting. So when they're hearing and chanting, then the heart really becomes purified, and they make advancement. And so Prabhupada quotes the first verse of Shikshastakam. And I'm sure you all know the first verse of Shikshastakam. All glories to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious, which we're always looking for. Everyone is looking for nectar, how I can become happy and enjoy. So like this, people through these exchanges become devotees, and then they progress. They progress by regularly engaging in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Okay, so now let's say we move on to the next paragraph. Right. So in the next paragraph, well, let's see. In the next paragraph, Prabhupada continues talking about chanting and hearing and being benefited by chanting and by hearing the chanting. He goes on talking about the beneficial effects of it, but then he makes the point that actually when we're doing this, when we're spreading the chanting like this, what we're doing is we are doing dadati. Dadati is the first word in the verse, and dadati means to give gifts. When we're spreading the chanting of Hare Krishna, we are giving a gift. So Prabhupada refers to the example in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's very interesting. Lord Chaitanya is asking questions of Haridas Thakur. Normally you'd expect it to be the other way round. Lord Chaitanya is God. We should ask him questions. But Lord Chaitanya, there were occasions when he took the position of being the one asking the question and let the devotee take the position of giving, of responding. Yeah. And so there's this example here of Lord Chaitanya inquiring from Haridas Thakur. You may also be familiar in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Lord Chaitanya, when he meets Ramananda Roy, Lord Chaitanya also questions Ramananda Roy, he begins by saying, what's like the goal of life? What's the best thing to do? What should we do? What's good to do? And Ramananda Roy starts explaining, it's good to do varnashram. It's good to do varnashram because it's a sort of natural social arrangement which helps everyone in Krishna consciousness. And Lord Chaitanya says, wow, that's really nice. But can you say more? And Ramananda Roy, anyway, it's a whole thing. It's a whole big thing. But Ramananda Roy says, he quotes 1866 Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadhaman Parityajya, Mamekam Sharanam Raja. Previously he just said, do your duty in varnashram. Now he's saying, give up all duties and just surrender to the Lord. So the whole discussion progresses right up to the love of Srimati Radharani. Step by step by step. What a discussion. And it's the Lord inquiring. And Ramananda Roy is answering. So in this case, it's a similar situation, at least in principle, although the discussion is much simpler. Lord Chaitanya is asking Haridas Thakur, at least in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it's simpler. Lord Chaitanya is asking Haridas Thakur, how can we help the living beings? Not just the human ones, but the living beings, all the living beings. How can we help them? And Haridas Thakur says, yes, if you want to help all the living beings, including the animals, the trees, the plants, the insects, the birds, then what will help them is the loud chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Yes. And Lord Chaitanya really appreciated that. Lord Chaitanya really appreciated that, and Prabhupada goes on to explain how Lord Chaitanya, you could say, he put that idea into effect when he went through the forest of Jarikanda. When he went through the forest of Jarikanda, then he encountered different animals. There were tigers, elephants, there were deer, and so many different animals in the forest, although those ones are most specifically mentioned. And Lord Chaitanya, he chanted to them, and they became Krishna conscious. If you're familiar with Chaitanya Charitamrita, you would know that story. that the tigers, they were embracing the deer through the influence of the chanting. It purified their hearts so much that normally they're enemies. The tiger wants to eat the deer, and the deer wants to escape from the tiger. He just doesn't want to know. He doesn't want to see a tiger. But now here, through the influence of the chanting of Lord Chaitanya, now they're embracing each other and kissing. Kissing is generally not so popular in Krishna consciousness, but they were kissing. They were kissing. So Prabhupada makes the point that when it comes to distributing the holy names, giving this gift, dadati, giving the gift of the holy names, we can't do it like Lord Chaitanya. We can't do it. But at least we can do it with the human beings. We can't do it with the animals. Means we can't actually make them devotees, but we can make the human beings devotees. And so this is dadati. This is dadati. And so Prabhupada says, contributing or distributing the holy name of the Lord is a sublime example of contributing or giving charity, the dadati principle. By the same token, one must also follow the pratigrinati principle and be willing and ready to receive the transcendental gift. And then one should inquire. One should inquire when one gets the holy name and gets Krishna consciousness from previously not having had it, but now one is getting it, then one should inquire. Please help me to understand the chanting. How do I chant? What to do, what not to do? So like this, Prabhupada says, thus the Guyam Akyati Prichati principles can be served. Aha. So let's see now. Devotees, what to do? It's just past 1:45 here. Let me see how much, if I, there? Okay, so we'll finish here. We'll finish here and we'll carry on tomorrow. And so we'll finish the whole of this verse tomorrow. So thank you very much for participating. Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna.